going to be talking about leaf structure and function. We have to learn about the actual structure of the leaf before we can start talking about photosynthesis. Okay, so what do plants need to photosynthesize and how do they obtain these things? So let's think about it. What do you think? Give me some ideas of what plants need. Okay, sunlight is pretty important. Water. Close, so we need oxygen, but what do plants need? Carbon dioxide, okay? However, we are going to talk about this, that actually plants can also go through respiration, so sometimes they'll need oxygen as well, and we'll kind of talk about how that works as well. Okay, so this is going to be pretty important. You'll probably see this on the EOC and on a test. You have to know the equation for photosynthesis. So we said we need carbon dioxide, we need water, and up here, also on the equation, it'll say sunlight. We have to have light energy in order for this to work. And then we're going to make, does anybody know what C6H12O6 is?
Sugar.
Sugar, okay? Specifically, what sugar have we talked about? Glucose, okay? That's glucose. During the process of photosynthesis, it actually makes glucose. And then we also get oxygen as well. Okay, how do plants obtain water? What do we think? How do plants get water? Up through the roots, and then obviously if it rains or if you water a plant. Here's a picture here. You can see the water coming up through the roots here. Okay. If it does come from, like if it's raining or things like that, it can actually be taken in through the central veins as well. So you can see the leaves have veins here. So if it's raining, water can be taken in that way as well. However, they do soak it up through the roots. What was that called? Think back to the water properties that we talked about. What was that called? Capillary action. Yep, capillary action. And that was the process of what two processes?
Cohesion and adhesion.
Cohesion and adhesion. Good job, guys. Bring it a little bit back from last semester. Okay, how do plants obtain carbon dioxide? Well, what produces carbon dioxide? Animals, we do. Okay, so that's where plants get their carbon dioxide. And you can't really see it on here. We're going to look at it in a second. But on the underside of the leaf, there's kind of an opening called the stoma or the stomata. And that's where it exchanges gases. And we'll look at a closer up picture of that here in a second. Okay. And you can see that's also where it's going to release oxygen. Okay, so here's a close-up picture. Let me grab notes here. Here's a close-up picture of what we're looking at, a cross-section of a leaf. We're actually going to do a lab next week. We'll look at all the different parts of the leaf, and then we'll look at the stoma and the stomata. So you can kind of see the different layers here. We have the cuticle, which is like a waxy outer covering. We then have the upper epidermis, the palisade. Then we have the spongy layer. We have the lower epidermis, and then it's also covered by the cuticle. Okay, so a lot of different things that we're looking at here. Well, we'll get to this in the next page. But let's take a look. What do you think these dots are within the palisade? So these dots right here. This is a leaf. What structure do you think those are? What was it?
Chlorophyll.
Not chlorophyll. Well, it contains chlorophyll, but what actual organelle? Chloroplast. Okay? So, and that's where what happens? Where photosynthesis happens. Notice which layer has the most. Yeah. This one right here. That's where most of your photosynthesis is going to occur. The one that has most chloroplast. Okay, here's just another picture. You can see the cuticle. Again, remember I told you about the stoma. That's going to be important to know. We're going to do a lab on that where we'll actually look at them. It's an opening right here between the two guard cells, and that's where gas exchange occurs. So plants need carbon dioxide. It's going to go in through the underside of the leaf, through the stoma. and then it releases oxygen after photosynthesis is finished. Okay, here starts your notes. So we talked about that outer layer, that's the cuticle, right? That's going to be the waxy outer layer on the leaf to prevent water loss. And that's really important. We don't want the plant to dry out and wilt. We want to contain that water. So that cuticle is a waxy, what do you think it's made of? If we're talking about waxy, what kind of organic compound? A lipid, okay? Then we have that upper epidermis. That's going to be the top layer of cells on the leaf, and it's going to offer protection. Okay, so we have the cuticle outer layer, which allows us to prevent water loss. Then we have that extra layer of protection for the leaf. Okay, then we have the mesophyll, which is the middle layer. We talked about there's two separate ones. First comes the palisade layer, and that's where the majority of photosynthesis is going to occur. Okay, remember we talked about that because there's so many chloroplasts in there. And where do you think the sunlight reaches first? It's going to go through the cuticle, it's going to go through the upper epidermis, and it's going to hit the palisade first. So all those chloroplasts are going to soak up that sunlight. And then we have the spongy layer. That's where the majority of gas exchange occurs. What was that thing that I called where gas exchange occurs? Stoma or the stomata. So chloroform. Okay, so that's where you're going to see the exchanges of gases. And when we go into the lab, I believe we're doing this lab on Monday. We'll have microscopes, and we'll get to look at the different layers so you can see what it looks like, and we'll have you guys sketch it. Okay, then we have the lower epidermis, the lower layer of the cells on the leaf. We talked about the stomata. That's the holes in the lower epidermis that open for gases to enter and exit. What gas is entering? And which one's exiting? Oxygen. Okay, guard cells are going to be close to that stomata. That's the cells that open and close to reveal the stomata. Okay, so the guard cells, and I'll go back to the picture so we can look at it. When those are able to open, it's going to reveal that stomata to allow gas exchange. So they play a pretty important role as well. I'll go back to this here in a second. So these are our guard cells. If they're not open, it doesn't reveal the stomata. So the guard cells play an important role. So when the stomata is open, that means we're doing what process? Not the respiration, but gas exchange, which could be respiration or photosynthesis. So when it's closed, we're not going through that process. Everyone get this slide? Okay, and it brings us back to the equation. We'll practice this quite a bit. We actually have flashcards that go through this, and you might want to write on there. I know it's kind of silly, but they call it the evil equation because it has 3 sixes. So it has 6 carbon dioxide, 6 water molecules, 1 glucose, and 6 oxygen. So it's just a little silly way to help you remember it, but it's called the evil equation. So on the test, you will need to be able to write it out with the molecular formula, not just say carbon dioxide plus water. So you'll be able to say 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O. Sunlight gives us C6H12O6 plus 6 O2. Okay, and we'll practice this. You'll see it on your activity and things like that. So we have flashcards as well. Okay. This is going to lead us to our last question. How do plants obtain light? So we said in order for photosynthesis to occur, we need some sunlight. How does it work? Here's the light spectrum, what we can see. Measured in nanometers of wavelength. So when light hits an object, just in general, it is either reflected or absorbed. So chlorophyll, someone mentioned that, I think it was Justine. chlorophyll is within the chloroplast, and that's actually what traps the energy from the sunlight to allow photosynthesis to occur. So chlorophyll is going to be the one that is absorbing the sunlight so we can do the process of photosynthesis. It requires energy, so we get the energy from the sun. Okay? So how this works is some of the light's going to be reflected and some is going to be absorbed. And I bet you can guess what light is being reflected. Okay, what is being reflected is the color that we see. So what color do you think is being reflected? Green, right? Because the plant's green. So the chlorophyll is not going to absorb green. We probably could see also a little bit of what other color? Green and yellow. Okay, so here's the spectrum. Notice green and yellow are very low because it's not absorbing that color. That's what's mostly being reflected. However, we're absorbing a lot of what? Violet, blue, some red. Those are going to be the colors that we're absorbing the most. I think you have that chart. Okay. Any questions? No, this is kind of new. It's a lot of information. A lot of it just takes practice getting it down. So we were able to answer the 3 questions, right? How do plants obtain water? What was the answer to that? How do plants get water? Through the roots, or if it rains, it can go through the veins. Okay, how do plants obtain carbon dioxide? What does it have to go through to get into the leaf? The stomata, which opens for gas exchange. And then how do plants obtain light? What absorbs the light? Chloroplast, but specifically what absorbs it? Chlorophyll. So the chloroplast is where it's being absorbed. The chlorophyll is what absorbs it. Okay? All right, so we're going to